No Jedi here anymore. Only dreamers like this fool.
It's time to head south with the Fantha from Down Under.
The Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
You're listening to the Fantha from Down Under, brought to you by Fantha Tracks.
That's not how the Force works.
Ready?
Aim! And...
Fantha!
And here comes the parade.
Here is your host, Adam O'Brien.
G'day, mate. How you going?
Tell that to Country Club.
Roger, roger.
G'day folks, how you going? This is the one, the only Fantha from Down Under, brought to you by Fantha Tracks Radio. I'm your host, Adam O'Brien, and coming at you today is the second chat I had with Eric Onkenhout, and we're going to be covering all sorts of Star Wars goodies here on the show today. And I must say, over the last couple of weeks, I've been looking into some of the older Star Wars that's out there. I tell you what, who knows what's coming after the Skywalker saga finally rounds out in December this year. We might see something we haven't seen before. Who knows? The coming of the Jedi themselves. Who knows? And, you know, what's great about some of the great expanded material we've got, or even some of the Dorling Kinsley books, is that we get to delve into some of that and really have a great look. Things like in The Last Jedi gave us a hint at the Prime Jedi, and I think that was something I'm really keen to see them extrapolate and maybe give us something down the road. Who knows? But what drew me back to the Dark Horse material in particular was some of the rumours going around of a Knights of the Old Republic, or dare I say, even a Tales of the Jedi. What I am really looking forward to is going back to a time before the Skywalkers, a time before a lot of the development that we're seeing, when whether it's Coruscant or any of the Outer Rim right through to the core worlds, and really just seeing a different era, a different time, and the foundation of this amazing universe of Star Wars. Thinking back to some of the ideas that even George Lucas had in the mid-70s as he was creating this fantastic saga. Who knows where it's going to go, but before we get into the chat, here's where you can catch Fantha Tracks on the web. And that is, of course, fanthatracks.com, where you're going to find all your Star Wars news in one single file. Make sure you check out @Fantha Tracks on Twitter for all the latest news and more, and also the YouTube channel, which, of course, Martin Keeler and the rest of the team do such a great job of. Some of the stuff you get to see at conventions. You can see reviews of upcoming merchandise, particularly the figures are always great to see come up there, and much more. You can actually catch this show on Fantha Tracks YouTube channel as well. Hats off to the teams for all the great work that they're doing. Also, check out some of the brand new shows like Planet Leia, which has been a really, really entertaining first episode. And I'm sure the rest of the team that are producing those are going to come up with some really great episodes in the future. So, before we go any further, I've got to say big thank you to all of you out there listening every fortnight to this show, and it's a pleasure to make it for you. I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, let's get into our chat with Eric, all the way from Boston, Massachusetts in the United States, to chat some Star Wars, right here on Fantha Tracks Radio's The Fantha from Down Under. So Galactic Patrol.
Yeah.
Lensman, the old Lensman rider, and Skywalker Space, all that sort of stuff. I tried. They're a bit harder to read because, I mean, they're built at a time where, you know, I think politically it was quite a different time.
Yeah.
And
it's a little dated.
Yeah, I mean, it's politically incorrect as well, in parts.
Yeah, yeah.
But as far as, like, the adventure and stuff like that, it's, I suppose, you know, you can see the influence it had on George. But I think Galactic Patrol in particular had a bit of an influence on a couple other franchises, one of them being Green Lantern.
Oh, no kidding.
No kidding.
I didn't know that.
Well, you think about it, they have their lanterns and they channel their energy through that, you know, to make all the manifestations they do with their rings. Well, the same thing with the lens.
I have the book, but I don't think I've gotten around to reading Galactic Patrol. And I think I have one of the Lensman books.
I remember the Lensman ones, mainly from when George was doing I think it was episode 1, and there was a bookshelf behind him, and they sort of scanned the bookshelf, and it had Lord of the Rings, and it had some history and Plato's Republic and a few other things, and then I saw Galactic Patrol, I'm like, hey, hang on, what's that?
I think you and I had the same reaction then, because I think I paused that scene about 5 times, rewound it. I was writing the titles down.
Isn't it crazy? Yeah, so when you look back on it and you think, oh, okay, well, there's got to be something there. Yeah, and after especially going through that, that was really, really interesting to see. No, I enjoyed it. I think the great thing is that we start to see with these fantasies that, they use the same mythic structure that Star Wars uses, and that Joseph Campbell obviously influenced not only that, but also Dune. Now, that's the next big thing, is, of course, Frank Herbert's Dune, being directed by Denis Villeneuve. The cast list is just, wow, it's a who's who.
Very talented. I can't wait. When's that coming out?
That's coming out November next year.
Oh, man.
So I dare say we'll get a
awesome.
trailer soon. We'd have to get a trailer within the next couple of months, I'd say, at least a teaser. But I would say you're going to see a lot of practical stuff. I mean, the worms probably won't be, and obviously the deserts they're shooting in are the same ones they're doing for episode 9. So same locations. Yeah. I think similar location to where they shot part of the location scouting for Prometheus. You say what you will about Alien Covenant, but Prometheus was shot beautifully.
I mean, I like all those movies. I think they're all kind of cool looking.
They are. I mean, Ridley Scott still to this day, 400 years old, but still has a good eye.
Not a day over 900.
No, that's right. He's the Yoda of directing. I've got to say, with Ridley too, I just had recently a writer and reporter on the show for Lethal Mullet podcast, John Mosby, who used to run Impact Action Magazine in the UK and is now based in the US. He was talking about Black Rain and Blade Runner and a number of the 80s films after really kind of fallen off the radar a little bit because of the failure at the box office of Blade Runner. But you can see his skills and his eye still growing, still progressing, really pushing things in the way of colour and light and stuff like that. And, of course, Black Rain has so much neon, and it's so dark. It's probably darker than it needs to be, but it's pushing that neon. That is a film that needs to be rediscovered.
Nice. Black Neon.
Oh, no, Black Rain with Michael Douglas.
Black Rain.
Yeah.
Black Rain.
In the 80s. It's based in both Japan and, I think, San Francisco, if I remember right. It's a fish-out-of-water story about, can't remember, it was drugs that they're covering, but basically it's one police officer has to go to the other country to track down a criminal, and then halfway through the movie they do the same again. And it's just, even some of the motorcycle chases in it are shot beautifully. Yeah. It's a gorgeous film.
So this is like a kind of in the future?
It's set in the 1980s.
Okay.
But I think shot in such a way that, honestly, he could have used the same stylings and backgrounds and even just some of the composition for Blade Runner. I think, if anything, it would have made Blade Runner a little bit more action in Blade Runner. Would have got, I think, even the 80s crowd going. It's still art house at the end of the day for that film too. So what's interesting for me is the fact that, you can see the work of these artists just growing and trying different things. It's experimentation. Even George experimented, and it's trying different stuff all the time. With that, they grow and grow and grow. So it's just brilliant.
Hi, I'm Nelson Hall, and I get my Star Wars news from Fantha Tracks.
Obviously, one of the great things of Star Wars right now, we've got Rise of Skywalker on the way. We have new films by, of course, the creators of Game of Thrones. We still know nothing about, but what do you want to see, Eric? What do you think they should do that they haven't done before?
I have an idea. I think they should kind of go in the past. Instead of having maybe lightsabers, they have like broadswords, something like that. Oh, yes. And I think that's why they brought in the Game of Thrones guys, because I think that's what they're going to do, because they have experience with that.
I think so too.
And I think it was in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge #3. I don't know if you read that comic book, but at the end of the comic book, I'm going to spoil it. So Hondo was in it, and he met with Dr. Aphra, and she had a hologram of a sword, like a broadsword, that she was, I think she was trying to like transport it, and she needed a ride. So I just think that's a little hint of what's coming, because I think that's like a link to the past.
Yeah, wouldn't that be interesting?
That's what started.
And of course, this has been done before, not just in, actually it's been done a couple of times. where we've gone so far back, the lightsaber hadn't been invented. So we've got, obviously, the Dark Lords of the Sith comics in Dark Horse Comics. And, of course, our dear friend Kevin J. Anderson wrote some of those. And, of course, Tales of the Jedi. These are titles from back in the early 90s through to 2000s, where we really didn't know a lot about the early days of the Jedi. And, of course, Dark Horse also had Dawn of the Jedi.
In the Knights of the Old Republic video game.
Yeah, that's true, 100%.
Yeah.
You know, KOTOR, yeah. And, of course, John Jackson Miller wrote all those, the comics for KOTOR, and wrote some stories for that in the Lost Tribe of the Sith. So, big shout-out to John as well. One of the great things about that period for me is just the mystery of it, the mystery of the Force. How did people actually get involved in it? One of the great things is if you read The Last Jedi's cross-sectional book inside, talking about Snoke, talking about also the Prime Jedi, so when the Jedi were one, they weren't just Sith and Jedi.
That book.
What were you thinking about that?
Yeah. What am I thinking about the book?
Yeah, well, even the idea that the Jedi were one at one stage, were a Prime Force, so they were both light and dark.
I think it maybe started out like, I don't know. I don't think about stuff like this too much, but I think at some point somebody got a little greedy and they went the wrong way. But anytime I think about like the history of the Jedi, which I love that history stuff. I don't think the comics from before or Dawn of the Jedi book, I don't think they went back far enough. I wish they went back further. Even the lightsabers in those comics, they were just lightsabers, but they just kind of drew them to make them look a little older. But I wish they would like get rid of the laser altogether and have actual swords. Or
even, as they had in the games, alchemical blades. So when you fired it up, it imbued a light around it like the Force.
That would be cool. There's probably a time, too, where they didn't know what the Force was or how it worked or why it did the things it did, or they probably didn't have some sort of explanation for it, kind of like our own history where we come up with, like, these stories to explain things.
In fact, you got to check it out because there's so many different books that have been brought up on the subject. Now, one of the old ones I found very, very recently by Bill Slavezak is, of course, the guide to the Star Wars universe. Now, there's a number of editions of this that came out.
I have one.
You got one as well?
Yeah, a different edition.
I tell you what, it's amazing. I think the original edition had a Star Destroyer on it, I think, if I remember right. But this edition's great. Again, it covers everything from the original Star Wars movies, and I think it goes up to, well, this one, Phantom Menace. I think they stopped on Phantom Menace. Just going through this now, and again, Ralph McQuarrie's sketches are all through this. Everything, right the way through. I remember devouring these for hours and hours to try and find any little skerrick of info that I could that I didn't know already.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember, like, my family thought it was nuts because I remember telling my brother, I want to know everything there is to know about Star Wars. He'd be like, what? Why? I don't know. I'm like, I don't know. I just do. And I saw that book at my local comic store at the time, and I wasn't old enough to drive. I asked my dad to give me a ride there before. I was so worried that somebody was going to buy the book before me. You know, give me a ride. I need to go get that book right now. And he did.
Oh, they're brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The thing is that we had such wonder back then at all this, you know, when it was all new. You know, we, especially, I think, coming out into the early 90s, majority of it was original trilogy, obviously, because that was the majority of what was out there. But even finding out about the cartoons and stuff like that too, or a Caravan of Courage.
The one that I have doesn't have the prequels in it. I think the one I have came out in 94. I think it's the same book. It was almost like a dictionary or an encyclopedia.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I love that book. I can't believe I still have it.
Well, I've got the original edition of this, so that would have been the one done probably about 96 or 97. But again, this is probably a lot of the material that the likes of Timothy Zahn, Michael Stackpole, and Kevin J. Anderson went through. You know, you've got everything in here. Quart, you've got Talon Card, you know, all that sort of stuff. And some of the illustrations are great. There's sort of the old pen and ink drawings we used to get.
It's classic now. Stuff's 25 years old.
It is. And I'm still surprised. I mean, with paper, you're going to get, you know, a bit of acid edge on the sides starting to fade and everything. But, it's still good, still readable, still brilliant, I think.
Do you guys have Stranger Things over there?
We do. Do you like the series?
I like it a lot. This past season, I think, was my favorite.
They do a lot of homages, don't they? Especially to the 1980s.
A lot of Star Wars things and E.T., Never-Ending Story. Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
Good
And
stuff.
didn't they do one for Ghostbusters too, didn't they?
I think that was the first season. Have you watched any of the show?
I've watched about the first 3 or 4 episodes of the first season, and then I got stuck on another series, I think, at the time. Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. Look, it's again, it definitely brings you back into the 80s, big time. I remember really getting pumped about that part of the series. What's interesting to me, too, is that in that period, there was so much coming out, whether it's TV, movies, and stuff like that, and some of those shows are, to me, what I remember even more than the movies. So Knight Rider, Magnum, and I saw somebody do a Magnum one from Stranger Things as well. I think it was the stars of the show itself did a Magnum intro.
That's awesome.
Which is different.
Yeah.
You know, you don't see that usually.
There was so many pop culture influences in the 80s. It was like ridiculous. It was like the golden era of TV and everything else.
There's only so many from 2000s that I like that. Brings us back to something that I think was heavily influenced by some of those star shows in the 1980s. As, of course, this bad boy, Malcolm Reynolds and Firefly. I'm currently going through a book I've had for a few years now, but I just, to be honest, I've never had the time to physically go through. And that's, of course, the core role-playing game by Weiss Productions. Great thing about this, not so much the game, but the information from the TV show that you get in this.
I didn't know they had a role-playing game for that show.
I think they've got a miniatures game as well.
That's a great show. Like, I remember so many people told me, you got to watch this. Finally, I watched it. I'm like, wow, this is really good. And I can't believe it got canceled.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, it was well before its time too. You know, it's a show now that would probably not be cancelled. And again, Fox really don't know what they're doing with TV shows, do they?
They had one season, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't even completed.
That's crazy. That show was so good.
I think they still had like 4 shows to go. It's only like, whatever it is, 14 or 16, no, 14.
Yeah.
14 episodes. There you go.
Have you watched Serenity? I'm sure you have.
Oh, yeah, big time. Big time, yeah. Yeah. Huge fan of the show. And I love the characters of what brings me back each time.
I got to watch that again. Thanks for reminding me.
And I love...
It deserves a rewatch.
And I love the operative in it, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, who has always been a great actor, but in this one, he kind of plays this really likeable but chilling villain.
I watched it once, but it was a few years ago. I've got to rewatch it.
And Nathan Fillion does...
It's got K2SO in it.
It does too. You know, well, the great thing is in it is also that Nathan Fillion does the best beating up Harrison Ford impression. He really does.
Yeah, he does.
So in that scene in the temple, he's getting beaten up, and then he does that whole shake, just like Harrison does when Harrison's getting smashed up by the Germans in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And he goes, it's not the years, love, it's the mileage.
That's awesome.
That scene with Marion in Raiders is still brilliant to this day. You know, he goes, "Where you hurt? I'm hurt here. Where you hurt? I'm hurt here.
Yeah.
Where you hurt? Hurt here. Hang on, I got to turn the mirror around." Turns it around, and of course they pull back to the end. You hear this? Ow!
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, only
brilliant.
Harrison Ford could do that.
Oh, and he pulls it off well. I think there's more comedy in his performances than people give him credit for.
Yeah. He's got this, like, he's rugged, but he's also kind of got that goofy side of him.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, it comes through even in a serious performance sometimes and humanises his character even more, makes it more accessible. There's that movie Regarding Henry, I think it is, where he's recovering from, he's been shot or whatever in the foul burglary.
Car accident or something?
I think so, yeah. He's lost his voice, lost his personality, his part of his mind is closed off. So he used to be quite a calculating character. But after the accident, he becomes a really likeable father, and one of the first things he says is, Ritz, like this. And nobody has any idea what he's talking about, but of course he's talking about the biscuits, Ritz. And a lot of my friends in the US forget that reference, but what could be a very comical performance is done in such a touching way that gives you a smile, but at the same time you go, hey, there's a change in the character already. Here's Harrison that I'd like to hang out with.
Yeah, he's so good. He's like the one actor we have nowadays. He's like our, I don't know, Humphrey Bogart or something.
Yeah, pretty much is Bogart. Yeah, I'd have to say. Yeah. He's right up there with it.
He's so versatile too,
Oh, I agree.
In real life, he kind of comes off as kind of gruff and but then you put him in a movie and he's like laughing.
Just don't jump into a plane with him. Fly,
Exactly.
yes. Land, no. I mean, it's funny how he actually lives up to it.
Yeah. No kidding. Don't go near any golf courses.
Oh, yeah, no. He got a hole in one, didn't he?
I'm Corey D, and I get my Star Wars news from Fantha Tracks.
Now, folks,
Oh, man.
Eric is a writer who writes for many different fan sites and stuff like that on topics all the way from Star Wars to obviously anything that's interesting in fandom. Now, what are some of the things that you've enjoyed writing about, whether it's at RetroZap or vice versa?
I wrote a review on the new Godzilla movie.
All
Have
right, so
seen
you've got to
it?
tell us about it.
Okay, I liked writing that piece because I really have something to say. Like, it's Godzilla. You're going for the entertainment. It's a popcorn movie. It's not there to get picked apart. That's what I kind of wrote about. The writing's not great.
So,
But,
what do you think is the difference between this one and the last Godzilla picture? Do you think it's the scale or the story itself?
The one that came out 2014?
Correct.
Yeah. I think I recently rewatched that, and I liked it a lot better the second time. And the reason why I didn't like it so much the first time was because I just thought it was really dark, like just visually. And I say that now, and I think that's kind of a lame excuse because people were saying the same thing about the Game of Thrones episode that was so dark. I thought that one was all right, but I just thought this one that just came out was like just really enjoying. It was good.
Oh, it's brilliant. And what I do love too is that the director, obviously, Rogue One, Gareth Edwards, and friend of Fantha Tracks, that's right. He's talked to Mark Newbold. Hello, this is Mark Newbold. How you doing? There you go. There's Mark. But
Nice.
but
I'm going to edit that part out.
Yeah. Nah, it's all right. Mark can grin with it. One of the great things that I think he was telling Mark and all them is that just the world that they build with not only Rogue One, but going back to Monsters that he did years before, which I think is a better film than Godzilla.
That was good.
That's a beautiful
Yeah, I've
film.
seen that. The whole movie, I don't even think you saw the monsters, but it was like the people's reaction. That's all you had to go on.
And it sold it, didn't it? I mean, it really did. I mean, it's I'm going to dare say it's better than Pac Rim. There you go, folks. I've said it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is.
I agree 100%.
But I'm going to say this: Pac Rim 2 was a better movie than Pac Rim 1. There you
I
go.
don't think I saw the second one.
Second one's really good, and of course has Finn in it.
But the thing is, I didn't like the first one, so I'm thinking, why would I go see the second
Yeah,
one?
true. But I mean, one of the great things about the second one is they actually shot it in real sunlight for once. Shot with the Del Toro's, that's his style, but the way that Stephen Esther Knight did it in the second film shows off the shine of the robots better, the mecha.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. I mean, it's got to be shot in real light, if you like. It's also shot in Sydney, so, hey, hello, how you doing?
The thing about Godzilla 2 that I really liked was, first of all, the music was awesome because it used parts of the original Godzilla soundtrack.
Yes.
And I tell you, when Godzilla made that classic roar, it was so loud, I jumped in my seat at the theater. You're not expecting it. The scene is quiet, and all of a sudden, it's just like deafening.
Oh, it's great. I mean, considering that
Terrifying.
you go back years ago and the original, Gojira pictures in Japan, there's so many classic pictures, and think of it as a guy in a rubber suit. The genius of it was just how they shot it, though. How they got that scale. Thank goodness they didn't get the shots in between the takes where the guy in the rubber suit's lifted up the mask, popping in the cigarette and going, right, we're going to know next, guys, come on.
He's talking to the director, and they're both the same height. It's
Yeah,
like,
they're
wait
both
a
the same
second.
height going, oh, there's bloody tail here. What am I going to do? I'm going to sweep the city? They just knew what to show. It's a little bit like Jaws. You show what you need to, not all of it.
Yeah, and that's how it works. You could leave some to the imagination.
And I think that's what's key. Maybe something that in the UK, Doctor Who could have learnt back in the 60s and 70s. Growing up out here, force-fed Doctor Who on Australia's Broadcasting Commission, the government network. Of course, every 5 p.m, we had Sylvester McCoy, we had, Tom Baker, all those guys. But what sold it again was their reactions to all what was going around them. It's classic. I mean, it's all there. These little trash cans with little laser things popping out going, exterminate, and go, hey, mate, what's that? Oh, bloody hell, it's a Dalek. Jump in the bloody TARDIS, let's go. And then, pew, off they go. I was just waiting for Sean Connery to rock, and there you go, wash a TARDIS. Why would I do that? I'm going to Ashton Martin shitting around the corner with a supercharger. Time travel? Ha! Hush My Babies, you know.
Incredible.
It's just one of those classic things. And the thing is, the Japanese films that influence, obviously, these now international pictures are classics. There's no getting around it. The influence of those films today is how we do those huge epic scales.
Well, you know what's funny, too, is they were influenced by, I think, King Kong and the American monster movies, like in the 50s. Well, it came from Beneath the Sea, or whatever it's called.
That's right.
So it's all a cycle.
It is. I mean, it's, you know, you even look at Aussie films back in the early 1900s. We had what we call bushranger films. So these were films about outlaws out here. So I suppose our version of Jesse James and stuff like that were put out there. So Ned Kelly, there was a Kelly. The Kelly, I think it was called the Kelly Gang. And it was just a bunch of reenactors in the early 1900s, only about 10 years after Ned Kelly had donned the iron armour. He was the original Tony Stark, by the way. The original Tony Stark. Yeah, you know, mate, I'm going to go down to the pub, going to go and steal some money down the pub, puts on this huge tin can thing, and they shot all they could. I mean, here's guys breech-loading rifles going, right-o, we've got to get this Irishman over here. They start shooting, the musket shells were just bouncing off him. So, literally, the first Iron Man. But again, the films in the early 1900s were all of his exploits, and I think that influenced the cowboy films.
You know what I really like about the older movies, too, is that they don't have to, like, show you all the gore and everything. It's just kind of, like, implied. I think it's a little bit more kind of a classy way to do it.
Oh, definitely.
You know, they rely more on the story than anything else.
That's right. I mean, even back to, you know, if you go right back around, John Wayne's John Ford pictures influenced Kurosawa, which then influenced George. You know, so it's interesting how almost a wheel of influence has come around again, because we're starting to see some of those shots in Star Wars and then seeing them again in other films, you know, that are shot on the other end of the world, you know. And it's, again, a visual communication.
I think Kurosawa made, there was Seven Samurai, and then there was Magnificent Seven, and then there was The Searchers. Lucas was influenced by that. Yeah. For the cantina scene. And then the cantina scene was redone in The Force Awakens.
Oh, it's just amazing. I mean, we've got such great, going right back to, as you say, like, you know, the influence of, particularly Yojimbo and maybe even Sanjuro a little bit, how they influenced the spaghetti western pictures by Clint Eastwood and Sergio Leone. I mean, even, God, was it late 90s, I think it was, Bruce Willis did a movie called The Last Man Standing, which is pretty much Yojimbo.
And I think even for the Mandalorian show that's coming up, they watched a lot of Yojimbo and the Dollar trilogy.
Yeah, definitely. It's particularly with, I think, the Carl Weathers character. I think we're going to see a lot of Lee Van Cleef in that.
Oh, he's so good.
I always liked Lee Van Cleef. Out here, one of the things we do on our smart TV, we watch a lot of old interviews with actors that were in their prime just before they sort of passed. Lee Van Cleef's episodes of, you know, late night talk show hosts chatting to him. Just interesting about this guy has had a career right back to the early westerns. I mean, he was somebody that'd been a villain in a lot of those pictures, you know, and, you know, fairly young at the time. And then didn't find fame until, pretty much the Dollars trilogy again.
And then, like, characters like Cad Bane were very, very much based on his character, too, so...
I'm going to say, I really like that character. I love Cad Bane. I think it's you know, there's a morality to him that he doesn't let out, but he definitely has a morality because he doesn't kill unless he really has to. I remember those, I think it's the last episode of the first season of Clone Wars and the first or second episode of the second season, where he's based around Coruscant for most of it. And you could see him playing the channels, like he's playing both the Republic against the Separatists. But there's a morality there. If he sees something that's not quite right, he'll be like, it's not worth it for the money. Yeah. And I like that. I like that. That's what Lee was about in those roles. He was doing it because of his dead daughter or whatever in the first one. And even though technically not the same character in the third one, you know, there's that similar gauging there. Because it wasn't the same. They always say the man with no name for Clint.
Yeah.
They're all different characters. There was Blondie and Manco, and I can't even remember what the first one was.
Something like that would kind of give the character kind of like a human element to the character instead of just being 100% evil.
I think so. Yeah, I think you nailed it. Again, and that's a very 80s thing. You know, a lot of the action movies at the time had that. Even those terrible Canon Pictures movies. I say terrible now, but really, I mean, I enjoyed them. I still enjoy them. You know, the movies where, you know, if they're running out of money, they just tear 3 or 4 pages out of the script. Hey, Chuck, nice. Chuck, the bearded man himself would be sitting there going, "Are you taking my Oscar-winning performance out of the movie? Oh, okay. More sidekicks."
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So, before we wrap up, we've got to talk about where people can find your writing.
I write for RetroZap, and I write for Skywalking Through Neverland occasionally, like a comic book review, and I just wrote a review for Lando's Luck. It's like a, not YA, a junior, kind of like a junior book. It's really good, even though the age range is from 8 to 12 is right in my wheelhouse. I've been writing a lot for them that has to do with Galaxy's Edge.
Oh, fantastic. And are you going to also see Galaxy's Edge soon?
Maybe. Me and a few friends were thinking about going at the end of August, but we couldn't do it this year, so maybe next year. I might go to Celebration next year. I might hit up Disney World while we're there. It would be a waste if we didn't.
Oh, you got to do it. You got to do it. Folks, you got to go and check out, obviously, RetroZap and Skywalking Through Neverland. If you haven't already checked out not only the podcast and the website, also, you're going to find some of the most family-friendly but entertaining podcasts and information when it comes to Star Wars and Disney, particularly with the parks. They're doing a lot of great video coverage right now, both Richard and Sarah, when it comes to what you can do inside the Disney parks.
I think they've come up with like 8 or 9 videos last time I heard.
And really, really well-polished videos, too. We're not talking little quick videos and stuff like that. They're really good quality. I mean, it's professional level.
Absolutely.
I want to get over there myself. And you know, like that's what it's done. It's really pumped me up to save some money and pay off some stuff so I can get out there.
I know. Same here. That's what I'm trying to do.
That's it. You know, one of the great things about this is that we've always talked about what would it be like to have Star Wars in our world, and now it's happening at Disney parks, at Disneyland in, of course, LA. So go and check it out, folks, if you haven't already been there. There's even flights here in Australia that are leaving for Batu itself. So there you go.
You know what we didn't bring up was the ILM in Sydney.
We didn't know. We should bring that up before we wrap. Yeah, so big news, folks, is that ILM opening an office and, of course, a studio itself in Sydney. Now, the history of Sydney itself is that, of course, it was the home to Episode 2 and Episode 3 while George was making those out here. A very famous studio out here, too, of Fox Studios, doing all films like, of course, The Matrix as well, and Moulin Rouge. Not Rouge 1 or Moulin Rogue.
Rouge. Remember that was going around?
Yeah, I remember that Rouge 1. You know, huge cinema down. A studio down there, and of course, we even have some folks that worked on the prequels still in Sydney. Mr. Rob Coleman, the man himself that created half the animation and stuff that we now enjoy from the prequels, is down there, still currently working in the industry. So I dare say there's going to be some time he's just going to walk in and go, "Remember me?"
That would be sweet.
Oh, look, and the experience that Rob brings, you know, I hope so. And I've always loved Rob on the behind the scenes, how he makes all that technology make sense when he's explaining it to a layman like ourselves. We don't understand all that stuff. So I love those, and I miss those. And Disney, why aren't you doing videos like that? Disney, come on.
I have a trivia question for you. Do you know which character was based on him?
Was it one of the Jedi?
Named after him.
Yeah. It was one of the Jedi that was in the Battle of Geonosis just as Jedi were landing. It was one of those guys. There's something...
Yeah.
It was the Coleman or something. I can't remember.
Yeah. Coleman Trevor, that's it. Is it the one that looks like a shark? Jango Fett took him out or something.
That's right.
He was standing on the dock and he got him and fell off.
That's crazy. That's nuts, isn't it? Our lamb out here means we could have some work down here as far as live action happening. Who knows? Absolutely. They might even shoot some stuff down here. They've got the studios for it. Farscape shot down here as well. So fingers crossed, folks. We get some more down under. And I'll tell you what, the Fantha will be right there with it too. We'll go down to Sydney and have a look.
Go.
You betcha. I'll get my mullet in the movie. I'll be just a little mulleted character walking past going, oh, Hello. Can you imagine? All right, folks. Well, this is the Fantha from Down Under, and I want to thank Eric for being on the show tonight. Thanks for joining us also and tuning into the show. Obviously, check out and subscribe on Fantha Tracks Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. That's right, Spotify is where you can find us more than anywhere right now. And, of course, go and check it out at fanthatracks.com. Eric, thanks for being on, pal.
Hey, thanks for having me. I know it was kind of last minute.
But it worked, because the Force
You
is
make
with
it
us.
work.
You can catch me on Twitter and Instagram at The Lethal Mullet. Of course, I have another podcast that some of you may know. And it's, of course, Lethal Mullet Podcast on Phantom Podcast Network, catching all the great movies of the 1980s that had mullets in it. Well, more than just mullets, let's put it this way. It catches all the nostalgia of that time as well. So go and check that out. I also share a lot of Star Wars goodies on there as well.